So let's begin this series by actually understanding where we can start with Python development. Now, one of the first tools that you would need is an IDE or integrated development environment. And a very popular one and also free one is Visual Studio Code. And you can come into code.visualstudio.com to download this application, and it works for Windows, Mac, Linux, and any operating system that you're working on. So once we do get this installed, we'll primarily be working in this VS Code, which is shortly called, and we'll go about installing a few extensions and see how we can go about getting set up in this Python environment in this project. Now, I would also like to point out there is another IDE called PyCharm, which is from a company called JetBrains, and this is another really good tool as well for Python development. You can come in here and look at what PyCharm is all about. I believe there is also a community edition, but there is a professional edition as well, which is not free and costs some pricing. So you can come in here and look at the pricing. So I've used both of them, and I sometimes prefer VS Code, I sometimes prefer PyCharm, whichever works for me in that instance, in that development environment I'm in. But let's get started with VS Code and click on this, and that should download a file, and let's get installing. So I already have this installed on my machine, so let me just open this up. So when you first open up VS Code, this is how it might look like. Now, before actually going through the entire UI, let me just come over to this button over here, which says extensions. And here are all the community plugins and official plugins for this VS Code is available. Now, when I say plugins, these are like extra libraries and tools that people have built. That might be VS Code team themselves or a community, and they release it out to this extension store, if you will. So think of this like an app store where you can go in and download additional apps. So this is similar to that, where you can go in and add additional extensions, which make your VS Code even more powerful and capable than what it comes out as default. So the first thing that we are going to search here is called Python. Now, when I type in Python, there are a few options that show up, and the first one is Python over here, which is having 120 million downloads. So we'll install this on a machine, and also there is this Python extension which we can install as well. But primarily, I'm also interested in this one, which is Python Environment Manager, which has 7.6 million downloads at this point. So we are going to install that as well. So if I just click install on this and install on the Python Environment Manager as well, so that should get us going with these two extensions that we want. So now you see it's switched from install to disable. So this means it's installed, and this is also installed as well. A quick way to check if this is working properly is if you press Command Shift P on your machine and start typing Python. There should be a few options over here: Python debugger, Python create environment, and so on. I believe on Windows it's Control Shift P, but yeah, you should be able to find a command like this where you should be able to go in and select whichever options that you want, and these are all coming from these two extensions that we just installed. So that's good. Now let's explore what we have here on the sidebar as well. So here on the Explorer, we can open a folder. So this would generally be your project folder where you're going to put all your Python files. And we have a search feature, GitHub repository, and few of these are useful when they want to be useful, but we're not going to focus on them in this video. So Explorer is really good because then it allows you to switch between files. And another tool that we really want to use is called the terminal. So in VS Code, I would just press Command and J on my keyboard, and this opens up a terminal for me. And here you see terminal, and you can go in and type ls and do all the Unix commands that you know of. So let's we'll come to this as well in a bit, but let's open up a folder. So I've just created a folder called University API TUT and then opened it up. If you're not able to find the open option, you just go to the file menu, and then there should be an option to open your file. Now, when I open this up, there are literally no files within here, but that's because we just created this folder, so that is fine. Now, what we are going to do next is we are going to create a Python environment. So here's the thing about Python, right? So Python has a lot of libraries that people have built over the years, and there are specific versions of these libraries that might work or might not work with what you're coding. So to get around this, what people have done is created an isolated environment for working with Python called as Python environments. And think of this environment as a small bucket, and whatever you put in that, you can keep it in that bucket, and then you, if you want to show it to someone or send it to someone, you just put a lid on that bucket and then send it to someone, and they are able to open it and play around in this bucket, right? So that is our environment. Now if we imagine we did not have this bucket, now that would mean we are installing all the libraries and everything into the operating system, which means you're not able to give that work to someone else to verify. Now, in a Teams setting where you're constantly sharing code between each other and people are working together to build a product, you really want this bucket or an environment that you're working in, and people are able to interact with your code using their machine, and you're able to interact with their code on your machine. So that's a simple explanation of why we need Python environment. Now, in this video, we're also going to be looking at Docker, and that's another bucket which will help us in packaging everything up and then sending it to someone or hosting it on the cloud and so on. But we'll come to that when we get to that section. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to press Command Shift P and find my Python command, and then here there is an option called Python create environment. Now before creating an environment, you have to make sure that Python is installed on your machine. So I found this really cool link over here which allows you to install Python on Windows, on Mac and Linux and so on. So I'm going to paste this link in your description as well. So you can come in here and click on download Python installer, select whichever operating system you're on, and then click download installer, and then go through these instructions, run the installer, and finally make sure that the installer is installed. So if I come to Python on Mac OS, there is a similar thing where Python actually comes by default in Mac, but usually it is 2.7 version, and we really want to be on 3.x. So we can go in and do a similar thing where go into the Python website, download it and install it on our machine. And then you can come in here and verify if it is installed properly. Now, when we come to VS Code, we are going to press Command Shift P and then do Python again. And here we will create environment. So if I click on this, we should be given a few options, or maybe in your case, you would not get any of these options because we would need a virtual environment installed as well. Now, a good place for that would be come to this link, which I'll paste in the description, called geeksforgeeks.org, where you can come in and create a virtual environment in Python. So you would need to go in and do pip install virtual environment, and this should install virtual environment on your machine. But sometimes it's available by default as well, so you should be able to run this, create a VN virtual environment in the current workspace. There is also option for CONDA, or this is Anaconda, but we don't have to worry about that at this moment. We'll stick to the simple one, which is VN, and we'll revisit this at a later point. And I'm going to select 3.11 because that is what I have installed on my machine, and I'll just select this, and this should start creating a virtual environment for you in this folder. So you'll see that there is a folder called .venv which is created now. So if I come and open up my terminal by going into the file menu and looking for terminal command, or just pressing Command and J on my machine, so you will see there is this which is also showing up on my machine, but this is again a configuration in my machine where I'm able to directly open up my virtual environment, but you might not have that. So what you can do is, so you can come in here and paste this command, which is source and then virtual environment name. So if I were to just show you how to do that, to activate your virtual environment, you can come in here and type this command, which is source.venv, which is this folder, and within this folder there should be a bin, so we're selecting bin, and within that there is a shell script called activate, and we are just selecting that, and when I press enter, you should be inside your virtual environment within your Python. So a good way to test this out is if I just do Python and version, you should see the version that Python you have, and also you can just type in Python and press enter, which will put you in this sub terminal, where you can execute Python code. So to exit, I'll just say exit. So there we have it. We have set up a Python environment on our machine in our folder over here. Now we can come in here and add a few files that we can start interacting with, and we are going to build this API out in this folder within this Python environment.